Hello and welcome to this week's Sky Fantasy Football Q&A as we look ahead to Game Week 4. As always, on Wednesday nights we ask the Sky Fantasy Football community for some questions and then we hop on here for the video and answer them. Our first question this week comes from Ian, who says, after Saturday's games there's a 3-for-1 from Spurs to Palace or United, so would moving to Casemiro or Anderson from Udogie, Romero or Bissouma be worth it? Now, taking a look at that possible 3-for-1, we've obviously got Spurs playing against Sheffield at home, and then Palace play decent fixtures. Man United's a bit harder. In any other circumstances where Spurs aren't playing Sheffield at home, I think it's maybe okay to do as well if it's towards the end of the season. I think with it being just at the start of the season, it's probably one I would miss out, especially with Spurs having such an easy fixture. With players like Romero and Udogie, you're going to be expecting a clean sheet there, which is 10 points minimum for Udogie as well, maybe even an attack and return. Bissouma as well, you're expecting to get passes, possibly tackles there as well. I think even with those 3 games, I'd probably just miss that out. Obviously with Palace as well, we've got Palace's fixtures. Obviously the 3-for-1 look decent, but right after that, these are the fixtures that Palace go on. And you're probably not expecting any clean sheets there. So as well as the Palace games look good in the short term, after that you're going to be looking to get them straight back out. So you're using 2 transfers fairly early on, and relying on Palace defenders, which I don't think is a great idea. So I would just skip that 3-for-1 and keep whatever Spurs players you've got in your team. I think Bissouma is just one that you should hold the whole season as well. And I don't think there's any reason to get rid of Udogie or Romero before they play Sheffield at home. The next question comes in from skyff Loser, who asks, what would you advise to do with double Brighton defence, and do you think Saliba to Diaz is still worth it, or did we miss the boat? In terms of the double Brighton defence, I'm assuming that means you've got Dunk and Estupiñán. When deciding which one to get rid of is a bit of a tough one as well. Obviously Dunk's guaranteed the passing, but Estupiñán is very good for attacking returns and is still getting bonus points. So possibly I'd maybe look at keeping Estupiñán there, to be honest. But in terms of getting rid of them, I don't think I would get rid of both. There's no reason to make 2 transfers like that. In terms of getting rid of one, we've obviously got more 3-for-1s coming in. It's basically the exact same as what we just showed with Spurs. But as well as Palace and United, there's also Villa and Wolves, the same with Spurs as well. We just didn't show that. In terms of getting rid of the Brighton players, Wolves don't really have any great players I would go for, so I'd totally ignore Wolves there. Villa could possibly maybe get rid of Estupiñán and bring Diaby in if you've got a space in midfield. I think could be a decent option. If you don't have Watkins, of course. Even if you don't have Watkins, maybe you can afford him and get him at striker. Man United, a bit more difficult fixtures. There's no real Man United players I like at this moment in time. Martinez isn't fantastic. Other than that, Rashford and stuff maybe a bit too expensive for getting rid of Brighton players. And then Palace we obviously showed with their difficult fixtures. So getting rid of Brighton's a difficult one. Maybe you could just move on to Awoniyi and get him in early. For the single game days coming up. But I think realistically, if you're looking at taking advantage of fixtures and stuff, obviously Villa have Liverpool and Chelsea, but I think Diaby might be the best option there. For me, again, I've got Dunk in my team. I don't have the double defence, which is a bit more of a problem, but I would just be holding at least one of those through the difficult games. I don't really think there's any reason to be taking them out. In terms of Saliba to Diaz, I think obviously a lot of us transferred Saliba out to get Diaz in last week for the extra game on the Sunday. I think now Arsenal and City seem to be playing in the same game day for the next couple of weeks, and it's probably not going to be too worth it because you can't get the extra game day, and you would probably expect 2 out of 4 clean sheets from Arsenal in the next 4 games anyway. I know you said in your tweet as well, would Diaz be a long-term hold, hence not missing the boat because you're going to have him for a longer time. But if we take a look at City's fixtures as well, from game week 9 they just look very difficult. They're playing the rest of the 5 of the top 6 teams in the Premier League over the course of 8 game weeks with 2 blanks in there. So by the time game week 9 comes round, we're probably going to be looking at getting Diaz out anyway. because that's Arsenal, Brighton, Man United, Chelsea, Liverpool, Spurs. That's 6 very, very difficult fixtures where you probably wouldn't be expecting clean sheets there. So I don't think Diaz is a long-term hold, and you've got about 4 games until we get to that point. So I think if you've got Saliba and you didn't do the Diaz transfer, I would either look elsewhere or just hold on to Saliba. Because again, I think it's probably not going to be worth it to move on to Diaz without that extra fixture when you're just going to be taking him back out in a couple of weeks anyway. Our next question comes from FPL Matt, who says, I own Turner and he's ticking over. Am I losing points over other keepers, or should I just hold for most of the season? Also, will it be worth getting a 1A as well for single captain days? Now, we've obviously seen recently that Vlachodimos might be signing for Nottingham Forest. I think if he does, obviously he's the number 1 goalkeeper for Benfica right now, and he's not going to be coming to the Premier League to be the number 2 backup goalkeeper. So if that ends up going through, I think Turner's straight in the bin. There's really not going to be any good reason to hold him, especially for those captain days. I do think Awoniyi is a better captain anyways, and just is the best captain for those days. So as you say, you do own Turner, and I think if that transfer goes through, I would be definitely looking to transfer him out, and then getting Awoniyi. And I think there's good goalkeepers at that kind of price anyway, like Sanchez and stuff, who you can go for instead. And then I would put the focus to getting Awoniyi in for game week 6. Our next question comes from FPL Spartans, who says, what to do with Richarlison if he's confirmed out? Would you transfer him on Saturday or Sunday, or hold and move to a 1A for the 18th of September? Now obviously there was news that Richarlison picked up a slight knock. I don't think there's anything going to be too bad about that. He's gonna, if he doesn't play on whatever day Spurs play, I think it's Saturday, he's got the international break to recover, and it doesn't seem like it's anything serious, so he should be back for the game after that. So I think even if he is out, I would just hold him and move to a 1A for that day. And obviously if he's not out, then great, we get the games for him before having to make that move. But yeah, again, we can just wait and see what happens with the news there, but I think either way I would just be holding. And if it is confirmed out before he plays, you can always make the early transfer to a 1A as well and get a 1A in for Chelsea, and that works as well. Our next question comes from Lee Williams, who says, what to do with Sam Johnson? Keep him, move him to Turner, Sanchez or Vicario? Now obviously the rumours are that Dean Henderson will sign for Crystal Palace, and I believe a news source has said that Sam Johnson will be number 1, and then it's just between performances between him and Henderson. So I think Johnson will play against Wolves at the weekend, so I'll definitely keep him for that. I think if Dean Henderson ends up signing, it's definitely going to be looking to move him on. In terms of Turner, Sanchez or Vicario, obviously we've said about Turner, probably going to have to leave him out for the rest of the season, because I think he's going to end up dropping to the number 2 goalkeeper spot. Sanchez or Vicario? Obviously Vicario has had a very good start to the season, a lot better than most people expected, but I think if you're bringing Vicario in, you're going to be tempted to captain him for the Spurs days, but I don't think he's going to be anywhere near as good as the likes of Maddison and maybe Richarlison if he can pick some form up. So I would personally go Sanchez. That's the transfer I'll be planning to make, as well as I also have Sam Johnson in goal in both teams. But yeah, I think Vicario is okay, but then Spurs start leaking a few goals and then you're moving straight back off of him. I think Sanchez is one of those prices where you can literally just have him and keep him in your team for the entire season at 6.6 million and just forget about him, because Chelsea are going to keep clean sheets, Sanchez is going to make saves, and I think it's going to be fine. So I would leave Vicario and then maybe put focus on getting Maddison in for those Spurs days, and then obviously Turner with Vlachodimos coming in, I would just totally ignore him. The next question comes from Chris, who says, considering Rashford to Bowen for captaincy on Friday, then Bowen to Rodri on Saturday, would you put me off this? Now this is one that I'm finding very difficult to explain myself in my reasoning for this. Obviously Rashford plays on Sunday against Arsenal, and Rodri plays on Saturday, Bowen plays on Friday. So it feels like if everything was kind of switched around, it would work very well for you. But I've said already in my game week preview and stuff, I don't think it's worth it to make the 2 transfers just to get Jared Bowen in. obviously, if you were already planning on the Rashford to Rodri transfer, it would only be one. If Rodri was playing on Sunday, as I say, it is quite difficult to explain. But if Rodri was playing on Sunday and Rashford was playing on Saturday, it would be a great move to do that, like it was last week. But you're not gaining any fixtures making two transfers there, which I don't really think is going to be great. And I think as well, if you've already got Nakamba, I would just captain Nakamba. If Bowen ends up blanking, then you're totally lost in two transfers there. If you don't have Nakamba, I think you probably just skip. I think the time to get on Bowen was a week or two ago. And I think again I would just keep the plan that you had already and just skip that day. If Bowen ends up scoring a hat-trick, that's just the way things are. I think on paper it just looks better to save your transfers. In terms of getting Rodri in as well, I think I would maybe just look somewhere other than Rashford just for that fixture gain. That's obviously just my opinion. The way I like to play the game is not to make a transfer really unless there is a fixture gain in there, if it doesn't involve injuries or anything. Obviously people are going to be different, but for me I don't really like to do it. I would personally either skip or captain the Nakamba if you already have him, and then I would look to try maybe get someone else in for Rodri. Next, GJ Magpie asks, João Pedro to Awoniyi this week or wait until after the international break? Also, is Brighton defender to Palace defender a good transfer considering their harder fixture run? Now obviously I think we've already spoke about that second question. Obviously with Palace's difficult fixtures, I can bring them back up again. After that 3-for-1, you're looking to get them back out again, so I don't think at this stage of the season it's going to be worth two transfers to bring in a Palace defender. But again, that's just my opinion. I think you're going to be better off just holding the Brighton defender. That's what I've already said that I'm going to be doing with Dunk. Just hold him through the tough games. João Pedro to Awoniyi this week or wait until after the international break? So João Pedro and Awoniyi both play on Saturday this week. João Pedro with Newcastle, Awoniyi with Chelsea, and then you get the extra game with Brighton. So you're getting two games for Pedro over one game with Awoniyi. Now João Pedro is playing against Newcastle at home and then Man United away, where Awoniyi plays against Chelsea away. I would just keep the extra fixture for Pedro. I don't think there's any rush, especially before an international break. Just keep Pedro, get the extra fixture out of him. If he doesn't start, he's still going to come on as a sub. And you're really banking, if you're making that transfer already, you're really banking on Awoniyi to score one or two goals against Chelsea rather than Pedro to score in Newcastle and United. But if it was me, I would just keep Pedro, get the extra fixture, and then wait until the single game days come along and then go for Awoniyi. I think that just makes the most sense, especially again with the international break coming up. The next question comes from Julian Henson, who asks, under what circumstances can you justify making transfers immediately before the international break? I think when you're looking at the international break, you're really just worrying about the injuries. I don't think it should put you off making like sensible moves. If someone's fixtures are changing this week, or you can gain an extra fixture this week, I would still make that transfer. Obviously, it's just going to be unfortunate if an injury happens over the international break. But again, I don't really think it's going to be like a big deal breaker. If you're going to miss out on points because you don't want to, or you're going to worry about what happens in the international break, I think you're just kind of being overcautious a bit. If a transfer's there and you think it's going to gain points, just make the transfer. I wouldn't worry massively about any international breaks. Next question comes from a person with no name, just a smiley face and a very difficult username to try and type. They say, who should I replace Bowen with? Isak, Sterling, Diaz, or someone else? Now he says he doesn't have Salah. I think Diaz is a good option if you need a captain for Sunday's games. I think if you've got someone like Watkins, if you've got Saka, if you've got Rashford, that's fine. You don't really have to make that Diaz transfer. Sterling, I'm not too sure what's happening with. I don't know if he's still got a injury, but I think if you're already loaded up on Chelsea players, I would probably just leave Sterling out. Like Jackson, Colwill, Chilwell, Enzo for example, because Chelsea's fixtures are going to end up swinging back to more difficult and you're going to want to get them all out. So if you're stuck with 5-6 Chelsea players, and then you have to make 5-6 transfers to get them all out for the difficult fixtures, I think it's just going to be a bit of a problem. So I think Isak's the best option there. Isak's the one I'm considering for getting rid of Bowen for as well. I think it's going to be good to get him in on him early with Brighton and Brentford coming up. I think he easily could score in those 2 games, especially with Brentford at home and the lack of Brighton clean sheets. Get him in early, and you're never really going to captain him with the way the captains are set up. Isak doesn't really make the best captain, but I think he could still get some goals as well. And I think he could be a great differential if you can get him before the Sheffield game when everyone jumps in on him. Our next question from Streaky, who says, should I do Colwill to Chilwell? Even in tougher fixtures, I think Chilwell is an asset with his high positions. Also, who's the best replacement for Paul Torres? I think Colwill to Chilwell is not really needed. Obviously, as I said in the previous question, Chelsea's fixtures are going to change in, I think, 5 games' time. Obviously, 5 games is a long time before, in terms of like not getting a player in. But it's a bit of a sideways move. It's a bit of a premium move right now, and I don't think it's really needed. If you look at the first 3 games, Chilwell hasn't really outscored Colwill. And unless Chilwell ends up getting a big haul, it's probably not going to be worth the transfer. As you say, he is definitely an asset with his high positions, but I wouldn't really consider making that transfer anymore. Maybe a week or 2 ago it would have been good. But Colwill, I think there's just going to be better options to move him on to. As I said, someone like Awoniyi could be good in a couple of weeks if your formation allows it. So I would maybe just hold and then do that. Also, you're saying best replacement for Paul Torres. I think, again, your formation kind of has to allow that. Again, something like Awoniyi would be a good transfer. In terms of defenders at that price, there's not really been too many standouts. The Palace defenders have been decent, but again, the fixtures do turn and you're going to be looking at getting them out in 3-4 weeks again. So I think I'd be looking at the midfielders. 8 million is quite good for midfielders right now. Mbeumo, Rice, Diaby, all looking fairly good. And the fixtures aren't too bad for them either. So I think I would try to do that if, again, the formation allows it. I'm not too sure what your team looks like. But if I'm getting Paul Torres out, I would go for one of those 3 midfielders. So with 3 questions left then, this one comes in from Jamie Sutcliffe, who says, best Nakamba replacements. Now I should have already answered this in my Game Week 4 preview, so if you've not seen that, make sure to head onto the channel and go give it a watch. But basically, I've said Bissouma is easily the best replacement there. It's a straight midfield swap and it's only 0.7 million that it's going to cost you. So if you don't have Bissouma, definitely look to get him in. I think he's going to be a very, very popular transfer with Nakamba playing on Friday, Bissouma on Saturday. So I think definitely that's a move that you should be making. If not Bissouma, if you've already got him, getting Awoniyi in is probably a decent option as well. That was going to cost you 0.9 million. And again, if your formation allows that, I think that could be a good transfer to get in early. Anyone else, you're really looking at like $1.5 million plus in the bank. Someone like Rice, again, as I said, could be decent. But there's really a big list of players you can get at that price if you've got a lot of money in the bank. But if your bank's tight, Bissouma and Awoniyi would be my 2 replacements. And the penultimate question comes in from Ian LeBruce, who says, who are your top 5 players to target across Game Week 4 to Game Week 6? Any player, basically. Now, obviously, Game Week 5 is going to be a blank, so it's going to be quite difficult to pick 5 players for 2 game weeks to target. So I think I'll give you 3 instead, because I don't really think you need to be making too many moves over the next couple of weeks. I think if your team's in a good place, you can easily just save your transfers. Top 3 players, I think Isak's going to be great. Obviously Newcastle's fixtures change for the better, and he's going to be a great player. I've already said this previously in the video. Another one I've said a lot of times is Awoniyi. I think he's going to be essential for Game Week 6 for those 2 captain days. So Awoniyi, I'm going to put Awoniyi at number 1 above Isak. I'll put Isak at number 3 actually. Number 2 I'm going to go for Bissouma. If you don't already have him, this week's the perfect opportunity to get him if you've got Nakamba. If it's not worked out, then just move on to Bissouma. So I'm going to go top 3 players. I'll go Awoniyi, Bissouma and Isak. And the final question of the video comes from George Thomas, who says, what would you do if you're quite happy with your start but don't own Rodri? It's worrying me, is he essential? Now, I do think Rodri is essential, especially with his current form. He's also said in an interview that Kovacic is letting him. Kovacic is sitting back a lot more, which allows Rodri to come forward. And Rodri's still getting 100 plus passes doing that kind of thing. He's obviously scored 2 goals as well in 3 games. I definitely think you've got to have him. But obviously, you're saying you're happy with your start. I wouldn't be ripping up your team just to fit him in. If you're making 2-3 transfers just so you can get Rodri in, I don't think that's going to be worth it. I think you're ruining your good start with that. Just be patient, sit on your transfers, wait until a good opportunity comes, wait until you can gain a fixture, wait till Man City play on a Sunday and you can transfer one of your Saturday players out for Rodri. Just keep it the same as anything else. Don't rush to get him in, and just as I say, play it safe and keep it patient. Definitely look to get him in at the first opportunity you can, but like I said, don't mess up your start just to do that. And that wraps up this week's Q&A. If you enjoyed, make sure to leave a like. Obviously next week there's not going to be any Q&A video because it's the international break, but we're still going to be throwing out some content. We'll try to get some Sky Fantasy video roundup videos for the first couple of weeks. Obviously, as this video comes out, the UCL draw should be finished as well, so we're going to have some UCL fantasy content over the next week as well to make up for no Premier League fixtures. So as I say, make sure to subscribe to keep up with all that. Click the notifications bell as well so you're notified when I'm uploaded. And once again, thank you for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video.